Hi, I'm James. I'm going to be your teacher for today. Let's get started. In this video, we will be exploring the concept of singular and plural nouns and the different rules we need to follow to change between the two. Let's start by discussing the difference between singular and plural. Singular is just one person, place or thing, like one pencil, one flamingo, one strawberry. And plural is more than one person, place or thing. 2 bananas, 3 trees, 6 stars. It is very important that we learn the following rules in this video to be able to change between singular and plural with ease. The first rule that we have is adding s to the end of a word, and in most cases this is the easiest rule and one of the most common. In most cases, the noun will only require us to add an s to the end to make it plural, much like in the examples here. Car will turn to cars, lizard to lizards, house to houses, and coin to coins. All of these nouns have simply added an s onto the end of the word to make it plural. The second rule that we must learn is to add es to words ending in ch, sh, s, x, or z. We can see from these examples this rule being put into practice. Therefore, church will change to churches and add an es onto the end. Bush will change to bushes. Fox changes to foxes. And bus changes to buses. In most of the rules that you're going to learn today, there will be exceptions to these rules, and it is very important that you learn all of these exceptions so you do not get confused and make a mistake in your writing. To have a light bulb moment with this rule and learn the exception, we have to know that if the ch at the end of the word sounds like a k sound, k, then we just add an s to the end of the word. For example, in stomach and monarch, we will just add an s to the end of these words to make them plural. The third rule that we have today, and this is one that is quite common, is if the word ends in consonant y, then change the y to an ies. Now, a common mistake that is often made in nouns that end in y is that people will just add an s onto the end of that word, and that is wrong. We need to check the word to see if it ends in a consonant and then the y, and if it does end in consonant y, we change the y to an ies instead. So let's have a look at our two examples on the screen at the minute, factory and battery. The first thing we need to do is we need to check the letter before the y at the very end. And if we look at factory, we can see that the letter before the y is an r, and we know that an r is a consonant. Therefore, we need to change factory to factories, dropping the y and adding ies. Okay, let's have a look at number 2, battery. Again, we need to check the letter before the y at the end of the word. And if we look here again, it's an r, which we know is not a vowel. Therefore, we drop the y and add ies to make the new word batteries. Okay, on to the second section of the slide then. Can you pause the video here and choose the correct spelling of the noun provided? Okay, let's see how you got on with both of these sentences then. If we use our knowledge of this third rule, we will check the word first to see if it ends in a consonant, then a y. If it does, we change the y to an ies. So in the first sentence, the little boy picked the berries or berries off the bush. Berry singular ends in ry, therefore we know we change the y to an ies instead. And in the second example, there were 10 ponies or ponies in the field. Again, pony ends in ny, which is consonant y, therefore we change y to ies as well. The fourth rule that we have to learn is quite similar to the previous rule we have just learnt. The fourth rule is if the word ends in a vowel, then y, then just add an s. In the first example, we have 3 keys shown. the first thing we need to do is ask ourselves what letter comes before the Y in the singular word key, and that is an E, which is a vowel. Therefore, we know we just add an S onto the end. We need to do the same thing in the second example with two boys. The letter that comes before the Y in boy is a vowel, and it's an O. Therefore, again, we just add an S onto the end of boy, giving us boys. And finally, we have four monkeys in the last example. Ask ourselves what letter comes before the Y in monkey, and it's an E, which is a vowel. Therefore, we just add S to the end of monkey, giving us monkeys. Our fifth rule is if the noun ends in F or FE, then change the F/FE to VES. I would like you to pause the video here and try to give these examples a go using the rule that we have just talked about. All of the examples here either end in F or FE, therefore we need to drop the F and FE and add VES instead. Okay, let's see how you got on with these examples. Again, these all end in F and FE, therefore we know we need to change these to VES. So knife turns to knives. Life turns to lives. Shelf ends in F, so we change it to shelves. And calf also ends in F, therefore we change to calves. As always, there are common exceptions to this rule as well, and sometimes this can catch a lot of people out when they see a word ending in F or FE. They think they must just add a VES. However, some of these words just don't follow the rule at all and require you to just learn them off by heart. You may have already noticed that I have given the incorrect plural word beneath each of these singular nouns. The correct way of spelling these plural words will begin to appear on the screen now. It is very important that we learn these common exceptions to this rule, as these sometimes appear on test papers or questions and can often catch people out. The sixth and final rule that we need to learn is a two-part rule, much like rule 3 and 4 that we have learnt before in this video. The first part of the rule is if the word ends in a vowel, then an O, then we just add S. And the second part of the rule is if the word ends in a consonant, then O, then add ES. Okay, let's put this rule into practice then with the first three words on the left-hand side of your screen. Let's have a look at radio first, and if we look at the letter before the O at the end of radio, we can see that it is an I, and we know that an I is a vowel, therefore we just add an S onto the end of radio. Let's do that exact same thing then with studio. If we look at the letter before the final O on studio, it's an I, therefore we just add an S. And finally, video, if we look at the letter before the O at the end, we can see it's an E, which is another vowel, therefore we just add an S onto the end to make videos. Okay, let's have a look at the second half of the rule on the right hand side of the screen, and these words all end with consonant, then an O. Let's have a look at potato first. We can see that the letter before the final O is a T, which is a consonant. That means we add ES onto the end of this word. Now let's move on to tomato, and again this ends with an O, and the letter before the final O is another T, which is a consonant, which means we add ES to make tomatoes. And finally, echo ends in H then O, and H is another consonant, therefore we add ES onto the end to make echoes. As expected with all spelling rules, there are exceptions to this rule as well, and it is very important that you learn these exceptions off by heart. These exceptions just add S onto the end of the word instead of adding ES onto the end. So for example, using this knowledge in practice, rhino turns to rhinos, piano, pianos, photo, photos, solo, solos, and kilo, kilos. Okay, challenge time for you now. Can you pause the video here and spend a bit of time and fill in the grid using the rules that you have learnt in this video? Okay, let's see how you got on with that task. Let's take the first word in the grid, which is wife. This uses the F or FE rule to VES. So if we change wife to wives. Secondly then, we have countries in the plural column, and this ends in IES, which should give us an indication that the root word or the singular word was ending in Y, and that would be country. Our third word is patio, and this ends in a vowel and then an O. Using our knowledge of this rule, we know that nouns ending in a vowel and O just add an S onto the end. Then we have player here as the fourth word, and this follows the first and probably the most easy rule, which is just add an S onto the end of the noun to make it plural. Then we have turkeys here in the plural column, and this ends in EYS, which gives us an indication that the singular word must just be turkey ending in Y. Next we have ratios, which is in the plural column ending in OS. This gives us an indication as well that it must just be ratio as the singular word. Second last, we have puppy, which ends in a consonant, then a Y. As we know, if it ends in consonant Y, we drop the Y and add IES to become puppies. And finally, we have bench, which ends in a CH, and this was our second rule. We know that any words ending in CH must add ES onto the end to make benches. To be successful and to have a light bulb moment, you must make sure you understand the following things. Understand the difference between singular and plural. If the word ends in CH, SH, SX or Z, add ES after these endings. If the CH ending sounds like a K sound, K, then just add an S. If the word ends with a consonant, then a Y, change the Y to IES. If the word ends with a vowel, then a Y, just add an S after the Y. If the word ends in F or FE, then change these letters to VES. If the word ends in consonant, then O, add an ES after the O. If the word ends in vowel, then O, add an S after the O. And finally, learn the common exceptions to all of the rules to make it easier. I hope you found this video today very useful and you'll be able to use this knowledge in your own work. Thanks for tuning into this video, and remember everyone, we learn best when we are happy.